Hello, this is topic 4.4, adding mixed numbers. When we add mixed numbers, there's a number of steps to follow. So let's take a look at an example. If we want to add 3 4/5 plus 6 3/4, we can see that we have two mixed numbers. And in our steps, step 1 says to add the whole numbers, and step 2 says to find the lowest common denominator of the fractions. These two steps are interchangeable, and I actually prefer to find the lowest common denominator first, get my fractions changed, and then add my whole numbers. So you can decide what works best for you. So I'm going to go right ahead to step 2, and I'm going to find the lowest common denominator of 5 and 4. And the lowest common denominator of 5 and 4 is 20. So I'm going to go ahead to step 3 now, and I'm going to change the unlike fractions to equivalent fractions. So I'm going to get ready here, multiplying 5 times 4 and the numerator times 4, and multiplying 4 times 5 and the numerator times 5. So I'm going to rewrite including those whole numbers. So that will give me 3 16/20 plus 6 15/20. So what I do in step 4 is I take along step 1 and step 4 at the same time. So I add the whole numbers and I add the numerators. But remember, you could add the whole numbers right away. That would be fine as well. So I'm going to add 3 plus 6, the whole numbers, which is 9. And then I'm going to add my numerators. So I'm going to take 16 plus 15 over 20. So that's going to be 9 and 31 over 20. But we have a problem here, because what we have is whole number 9, and then an improper fraction as the second part of our mixed number, and that's not allowed. So what we're going to do is step 5, we're going to change our improper fraction to a mixed number in lowest terms. So we're going to focus on the 31/20, and we're going to change that to a mixed number. And we'll just hold on to that 9 beside. So 20 goes into 31 once, with 11 left over 20. That fraction is in lowest terms, so now I'm ready to go to step 6. I'm going to add the whole number that I got earlier, the 9, with the mixed number. So I'm going to add the 9 plus the 1. So that 1 11/20 gets added onto 9, so that will give me 10 11/20. I double check that my fraction is in lowest terms, and it is, so my final answer is 10 11/20. So let's do a few of these together. Number 1, we have 4 1/3 plus 5. So you can notice here that this 5 is not a mixed number, it's just a whole number, so we don't have any fraction at all. So all we have to do is add our whole numbers here. So we can do step 1 for this. We add 4 plus 5 is 9, and we bring the fraction over. So 4 1/3 plus 5 is 9 1/3. For number 2, we have 2 5/13 plus 7 6/13. So we see that we have a common denominator. These are like fractions, so we don't have to do many of the steps because we don't have to make any changes to the fractions. So what we can do now is add our whole numbers. 2 plus 7 is 9, and we can add our numerators. 5 plus 6 is 11 over 13. And in this case, our answer is a proper fraction with the whole number. So we have a mixed number, and this mixed number is already in lowest terms. It's 9 11/13. For number 3, we have 7 2/3 plus 4 1/2. So here our fractions are different. They're unlike fractions. So I know that 7 plus 4 is 11, but I'm going to hold that and work on my fractions first. So my lowest common denominator of 3 and 2 is 6. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 2 and the numerator times 2, and multiply 2 times 3 and the numerator times 3. And then I'm going to rewrite the fractions. So that will be 7 and 4/6 plus 4 and 3/6. Now I'm going to add my whole numbers and my numerators. 7 plus 4 is 11, and 4 plus 3 for my numerators is 7/6. Now I can see that the fraction portion here is an improper fraction. So what I need to do is change the 7/6 to a mixed number. So 6 goes into 7 once, with 1 left over out of 6. And then I must remember that this was 11 and 7/6. So I've changed the 7/6 and I have to add the 11 onto the 1 and 1/6. So this will give me a final answer of 12 and 1/6. For number 4, we have 3 different denominators. So we have 3 and 1/12 plus 11 and 2/5 plus 4 and 3/15. So when you have 3, you have a couple options. You could add 2 of them together, get an answer, and then add a third one. Sometimes I find that to be harder than figuring out the lowest common denominator of 3. We've learned some different strategies for figuring out the lowest common denominator. The strategy that I'm going to use is to count up by the biggest number and then ask myself if the other numbers make that. So 15, 30, well, 5 makes 30, but 12 doesn't. 45, 12 doesn't make 45. 60 is my next number for a multiple of 15. Well, 12 makes 60, that's 12 times 5. And 5 makes 60, that's 5 times 12. So my lowest common denominator here is 60. So I'm going to be multiplying each of the fractions, raising the terms to make the fraction out of 60. So the first fraction, multiply by 5, second one, multiply by 12, and the third one, multiply by 4. And I'm going to rewrite everything. So I'll have 3 and 5/60 plus 11 and 24/60 plus 4 and 12/60. Now I'm ready to add my whole numbers and add my numerators. So first I'm going to do my whole numbers. 3 plus 11 plus 4, that equals 18. And then I'm going to add my numerators. 5 plus 24 plus 12. 24 plus 12 is 36, and another 5 is 41/60. I have a proper fraction here, so I have a good mixed number, and 41/60 is in lowest terms. So this is my final answer, 18 and 41/60. Let's look at 3 questions for the exercise. The exercise is first asking us to estimate and then solve. So I think if you estimate every second one, that would be fine. I'm going to show you and remind us how to round and estimate. And then we're going to make sure that all of our answers are in lowest terms. So for number 1, if we want to find the estimate, 4 as a whole number just stays the way it is. And if we remember our rules for rounding fractions, this is like 0 and 2/3. And as long as you're at halfway, you're going to round up. So 2 out of 3 is at halfway, it's higher than that. So the 0 there is going to round to a 1. So our answer is going to be close to 5. When we look at adding these two numbers, we have 4 plus 2/3. Remember, that's like 0 2/3, so it's like adding 4 plus 0. So 4 plus 2/3 is just 4 2/3. So that's our actual answer. For number 2, we have a fraction plus a whole number. So remember, this fraction is like 0 1/5. This time we do not meet the halfway, so this number is going to round to a 0 for the estimate. And the 6 just stays as a 6. So 0 plus 6 is 6. For our actual, we're just adding 1/5 to 6. So there's nothing to change in terms of a denominator, it's just 6 1/5. For number 21 on page 25, first let's do the estimate. So if we look at 5 4/5, the 4/5 is going to round the 5 up to become a 6. Remember, 4 out of 5, that would be a pass on a test, so it rounds up. 8 7/10, 7 out of 10 is meeting halfway, so the 8 rounds up to a 9. And 9 3/4, the 3/4 will round the 9 up to a 10. So for our estimate, we're looking at an answer that is close to 25. For our actual, we're going to be adding our whole numbers and adding our fractions, but these fractions are not like fractions. So we're going to find the lowest common denominator of 5, 10, and 4. If we count up by tens, we're going to hit that lowest common denominator quickly. 10 and then 20, and both 4 and 5 make 20. So our lowest common denominator here is 20. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 4 and the numerator times 4, 10 times 2 and the numerator times 2, and 4 times 5 and the numerator times 5. And I rewrite everything. 5 and 16 20ths plus 8 and 14 20ths plus 9 and 15 20ths. Now I can add my whole numbers. 5 plus 8 plus 9. This is going to be 22. And now I can add my fractions. Remember, my denominator does not change. So I'm going to add 16 plus 14 plus 15. 16 plus 14 plus 15 is 45. I can see that the fractional portion here is an improper fraction, so I need to change that to a mixed number. So 20 goes into 45 twice, with 5 left over out of 20. And I need to reduce that fraction to lowest terms. So I'm going to divide by 5. So this will give me 2 1/4. And I must remember that I had 22 and 45 20ths. So I need to add my whole numbers together at the end. So this will equal 24 1/4. And that's pretty close to my estimate of 25. So my actual answer is 24 1/4, and my estimate is 25.